Welcome to The Real News. I'm Kim Brown in Baltimore. A small and little-known committee of the UK Parliament voted on Monday to approve the EU-Canada Comprehensive Economic Agreement, otherwise known as CETA. The European Committee B, as it is known, appears to be the only group of parliamentarians who will have a say, and as such, it seems that meaningful scrutiny of the legislation will not occur. Furthermore, 2 weeks ago, the International Trade Committee of the European Parliament also voted in favor of CETA. In a vote of 25 to 15, the International Trade Committee voted to advise the European Parliament to approve the deal. This is what the committee rapporteur, Artis Pabrikas, had to say on the matter.
We can really call this trade deal as an exemplary trade deal because we trust each other, European Union, Europeans trust Canadians and vice versa, and we share the same values. And if countries which share the same values are concluding such deals, it also brings these countries closer, stronger, and it improves the transatlantic tie. So in our days, when we see that global world is turning more protectionist, more nationalistic, more inward-looking, I think it's highly important that those who share the same values and the same goals are sticking together.
Trade unions, civil society, and human rights groups across Europe oppose the agreement. However, Mark Dern, who is the senior trade campaigner of the UK-based group War on Want, blasted CETA, which he said will, quote, cause job losses, force privatization of public services, and introduce private legal system that allows U.S. and Canadian corporations to sue European governments. The advocacy group called Global Justice Now calls it, quote, a major threat to our democracy. And joining us today to discuss CETA and the recent vote is Jean Blaylock. Jean is a policy officer at Global Justice Now. She has worked for over a decade on international trade and food issues. Jean, we appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, Jean, can we start off with an explanation as to what exactly the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, or CETA, is?
It's a trade deal between Canada and the United States, but very little of it is to do with what you might actually think of as trade, the selling of goods from one country to another, because we already have very high levels of trade between the two regions. Most of it is about deregulation, about promoting an agenda around privatization, and about increasing the control that corporations have of economy and society. CETA would allow foreign companies to sue governments for changes in regulation and laws that they think might affect their future profits. So Canadian companies could sue European Union countries, and European companies could sue Canada when there are things that they don't like in laws. This is something that has happened quite a lot between Canada, the US, and Mexico under NAFTA, and it's something that would be able to happen more as a result of CETA.
So, Jean, I believe that you attended the meeting at Committee B. So what can you tell us about what happened during that debate?
Well, it was a debate that had been promised for months. Civil society groups and also parliamentarians had been asking our trade minister since about September last year for a chance to have a debate on this trade deal in Parliament, because it's something that can affect so many areas of life. Because it has this deregulatory agenda, because it poses threats to our health service, it's something that really needs to have a full democratic debate. And our trade minister had promised that there would be a debate on the floor of the House in the Parliament here. However, after a couple of months, there still hadn't been a debate. He was asked again, and he again promised. This happened again, and then at very short notice, with about 3 days' notice, he said that there was no time to have it as a main debate within the main chamber in the Houses of Parliament. That again, instead, it would happen in this small committee, which had a total of 13 members of Parliament in it. which was scheduled at the same time as the major debate happening in our parliament at the moment about Brexit. So everything and everybody is focused on that because obviously that's very important. And this was tucked away in a corner where nobody was paying attention, and was a very disappointing debate. The MPs who were actually there were able to raise points, but those points will have been heard by very few people other than those who were in the room at the time.
Geraint Davies is a member of the European Committee B. He also wrote a scathing critique on the vote and of CETA that was recently published by your organization. The Member of Parliament for Swansea West penned an article entitled Secret CETA Vote, a cut in the dark that won't stop bleeding. Now, in the article, Mr. Davies argued that the debate of CETA has been, quote, confined to a committee room and silenced by the noise and fury of the Brexit debate, as something that you just alluded to, Jean. So how is it that such a significant piece of legislation won't be voted in by the entire UK Parliament?
We actually have appalling levels of democracy in our trade policy at the moment in the UK. Even though we are leaving the EU partly because of people's concerns around democracy and loss of sovereignty, actually we have more of a say through the EU than we do through the UK Parliament. Through the EU, the European Parliament has to have a say in trade policy, and the European Council of all of the governments within the European Union have to give a mandate for a trade negotiation to begin, and they also have to approve a trade negotiation. Whereas within the UK, this can all be done under what's called the royal prerogative. The government doesn't have to ask Parliament for agreement to start a trade negotiation. It doesn't have to consult Parliament, and it can sign an agreement, and then all it has to do is bring that agreement and do what's called laying it before Parliament, which means that they put down a notice that the agreement has been signed, and if nobody objects to it within a month, then the agreement is ratified. There is no scrutiny and no possibility of having a democratic debate on the subject, something which would actually improve our trade policy. It's not that this is just, process for the sake of process. We would actually have a better trade policy if there was actually the chance for there to be a proper public debate, for our representatives to be able to scrutinize what's being done within the trade deals, for people to consider some of the unexpected effects that trade deals might have, which is we're more likely to see that happening if these things are done out in the open and more people can consider what the impacts of our trade deals might be.
So the advocacy group, the War on Want, quote, the only country, this is what they say, quote, the only country-by-country impact assessment of the CETA deal highlights that it will cost 10,000 jobs in the UK and 200,000 jobs across Europe. So, Jean, if you know, can you tell us where this impact assessment came from and why so many jobs are expected to be lost in the UK and more broadly across Europe as a result of this deal?
There have been different impact assessments done. That one was done from Tufts University. The suspicion is that jobs will be lost partly as a result of deregulation, because of the ability of large corporations to be able to consolidate the control that they have within the economy. In some areas, for instance, particularly in agriculture, the farms within Europe tend to be much smaller size farms, and they're not going to be able to compete with the large farms in Canada, and there will be jobs lost in this area.
Indeed. So how do you respond to the comments made in favor of CETA by the European Committee Rapporteur on Trade, Artis Pabrikas, who said that CETA is a blow against nationalism and protectionism and reflects shared Canadian and European values?
It's an argument that I've heard from quite a few MEPs. I mean, these are strange times, difficult times. I think there's a strong feeling from many people that for instance, the approach to trade policy being taken by Donald Trump is a destructive approach, and therefore people want to stand for something else. But Donald Trump is cynically using genuine anger and genuine suffering that many people across both the US, Canada, and the European Union have experienced from trade deals in the last 20 years or so. And the solution, the way to respond to that is not just to have more of these trade deals. I'm in favor of having a multilateral approach to looking at economic issues like this, but we have to take seriously the fact that there are problems with trade, the approach to trade that we have been having for the last 20 years. It's an approach that takes one very narrow economic view, this view that everything within the economy and everything within society must be minimally trade distorting. There are many things that we would seek to achieve within our economy and that we think are more important within society than being minimally trade distorting. And many people have been losers as a result of trade. I mean, this is something that even the IMF will acknowledge nowadays, that globalized trade has losers, that although some people have benefited, those benefits have not been shared, that it has greatly increased inequality. Those concerns need to be taken seriously. People need to be prepared to reconsider our approach to trade policy and to try and come up with an approach to trade policy that would actually support the growth of decent jobs, support the environment, be able to support our climate commitments, rather than just saying that we need to agree yet another of these highly damaging trade deals and push it through these very secretive processes, which just reinforces the suspicion and the anger that many people have about the feeling that elites are just pushing through processes without regard to their impact on everyday life.
We're going to take a quick break because this is such an in-depth and comprehensive topic. We're going to need a little bit more time. We're speaking with Jean Blaylock from Global Justice Now. We've been discussing CETA, the EU-Canada Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement. It's being debated now in the European Parliament. It's not clear whether or not the UK Parliament and whether or not Britons at large will get to weigh in on this. So stick around for part two. You're watching the Real News Network.